Where'd you get 4?
Well, a lot of people are making $4,000 a year. Well, the one that that I think it was a milkman. He was making $4,000 a year, but the machine was $10,000.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the one that they collected the money. So yeah, I was looking at that at that right now, and for that, yeah, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Great story. So again, thank you for taking a look at the video, Who Shall Live. I think that it offers value to everybody who's gonna work in this industry, or who's gonna like be forced into this industry through like kidney failure, right? Like, it's good to know the history of it, because we kind of, don't get me wrong, but we can take it for granted, right? That we have this entitlement today. So it's like the adversity that somebody felt in 1965 versus the adversity that they feel today with chronic kidney disease, or ESRD, better yet. It's a different animal.
Yeah.
Like, you had a death sentence in the 60s, right? If you had kidney failure, like, how likely was it that you were near a hospital that had the research grant? And then how likely is it that you had the $10,000 a year and 3 years, down, and that you were gonna make it through these panels with flying colors? There was a lot of variables there, right? Like qualifying in the first place, and then also, I think the subjective nature of the panels cannot go overlooked. Like, it wasn't a machine, it wasn't a computer, it wasn't a calculation. It was people that had to make a decision.
Yeah. Mr. Morales, I had a question, a little confusing. In that video, I noticed Dr. William Kell said that he made his first machine in 1939, and then he had to leave because the Nazis took over.
Yep.
Is that when the first machine was made, or was it made in the Compton Hospital in 1943, where the first patient, the 17th patient, arrived?
To my knowledge, and that's going to be really, I think you're going to find different accounts of history.
Yeah.
Because it's, well, I mean, it's the original utilization of a hemodialysis machine successfully, right? But
yes.
So I think if you really want to dive into that, you can look in, like, kind of Google Northwest Kidney Centers and their archives, because that's where like Belding Scribner started, and like they really have a good account of history. They actually have a museum there. But to my knowledge, the actual first successful treatment is somewhere between 43 and 45. Okay. And the making of the machine, just that exact story that you mentioned there, of making and then having to like defect and move around. And in one video I saw, it says that he actually, or he either commissioned or he stole the parts to make it from like Nazi depots, like warehouses, where they were gathering like raw materials and things like this. So as far as the first successful, I've seen it accounted as 43 or 45, so I'm going to call it 43 to 45. Most accounts have it as 1943.
Yeah.
And then the making of the machine, I don't know how far it dates back, but that's the story that I've saw in like their like History Channel videos that Northwest Kidney Center participated in. And then the literature doesn't really go into that too much. It's going to be really, like I said, clouded on that history.
Yeah. What is the name of the dialysis? What is the brand name of the dialysis machine we use, or are there many kinds?
Did they use then?
Yeah, the ones, like you know how they have brand names
today or back then? What
I know today.
Oh, Fresenius is the largest largest manufacturer in the world. So they are a provider, but they also make dialysis machines.
Oh, okay. All right, that's interesting.
Yep. And then there's a couple other players out there that have good market share, like one called B-Bron, it's a dialogue machine. And then the next stage machine, which is the one that would go home with patients. It's kind of got the market there, but there's a lot of emerging technology as well. There's a good handful of machines, new machines that are either just FDA cleared or are pending submission. So like in your guys' entry to dialysis, I'd say you're gonna see like more machines than the people, like, let's say in the last 20 years that they've been exposed to, because we've really, like, for me, my era, it was like, you're going to work with Fresenius equipment. That's just the way it was, because they're the largest manufacturer in the world, largest provider in the world. You're likely working with Fresenius machines, whether it's the clinic that you work at bought them, or you're actually at a Fresenius clinic. And then I worked with a couple other conventional machines like that B-Bron, one called a Gambro Phoenix. God, there was one a while, like kind of further back, called Baxter. I think they were called 550 and 1550s. But like the Fresenius models can, like, I started using it at model E, then it went to H, then to K, then to T. So it just, like, you'll get also upgrades or updates to the machines.
Okay.
All right. So today we wanna break in really slow. Actually, this week we want to break in slow and kind of keep it very open dialogue like we are now. So if you have questions, stop me, okay? But we're gonna talk high level about chronic kidney disease, and then drill it down with our discussion. So let me share my screen.
Stop it. Come lay down right now.
All right, you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So we kind of grazed over this the other day, but in the United States, this is not a small problem, right? Chronic kidney disease. It's a massive problem that is well over, like, take a guess at how much money the actual like Medicare spends on chronic kidney disease. Take a guess. How much per year?
Millions.
Millions?
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
What do you think, Joanne? Like, how many millions?
Yeah, like like that too, like millions.
Yeah. So how about over 100 billion?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Millions, nothing. That's like one company, more than millions of dollars, like billions, literally. Not like DaVita and US Renal Care and Fresenius. They make well into the billions of dollars a year. So these companies, or I should say this industry, is massive. And when I say 100 billion, it's not just dialysis, okay? It's all the cost of care around chronic kidney disease. So even if they don't need dialysis, but also with end-stage renal disease where they would die without dialysis. 1 in 7 Americans, or somewhere around 37 million Americans, have chronic kidney disease in one of its stages. Right? If you have stage 1 or 2, you probably won't. You wouldn't know it unless you're going to the doctor and getting blood work and getting checked. Okay, but you probably wouldn't be symptomatic. You probably wouldn't have any like bad feeling that like alerted you, like, hey, I better go see the doctor. Right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I mean, what's the #1 cause of chronic kidney disease in the United States? Type 2 diabetes.
Hypertension and type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, #1 is type 2, right?
Yes.
So and the #2 is the hypertension. So with those, a lot of times when you have those, you don't know that you have it either, right?
No, you don't.
Mhm.
Like they call it the silent,
Silent killer.
right? Both of them, because people are walking around feeling healthy and looking good, and on the inside they've got, you know, really high blood pressure, sometimes really high blood sugar, and there's vascular damage being done, right? So
Yep.
so 1 in 7 Americans have this chronic kidney disease, but let's go beyond that. Like if the number one cause is type 2 diabetes, like how many people have that?
Oh, that's a lot.
A lot.
You know, we're talking probably just in type 2 diabetics, like diagnosed, I'm guessing right around the 30 million mark,
Mhm.
Americans. And then type 2 pre-diabetic, again, I'm guessing just based off of kind of like the last time I really dug into it, and that numbers should have probably went up. I'm guessing somewhere around 80, 90 million pre-diabetics. And you guys are welcome to go look these numbers up and then have dialogue on that. Okay. Like go just Google, like how many diabetics, how many pre-diabetics, hypertensives, probably like a third of our country.
Mhm.
So 1 in 7 Americans seems like a lot, right? I remember Laura was noticing like, wow, 1 in 7 is at the noon, because it was like 1 in 10. Now it's 1 in 7. So that seems like a lot, but when we look at like who's in line, you know,
Yeah.
who's in line is all these type 2 diabetics and these hypertensives, right? And when I say these, like that very well may be one of us, right? I have been pre-diabetic and I've been hypertensive. I've been on medication for hypertension and then been told to exercise and eat better from the doctor, right? So,
Yeah.
so there's plenty in line, you know. And then if you were actually go look at everybody's glomerular filtration rates or their kidney tests, you'll be surprised by how many people are actually deficient of what's normal,
Mhm.
that are not diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, but are actually running in, as far as their numbers, at a stage of kidney disease. So like doctor won't even address it. Okay. So a lot of people in line for this. 1 in 7 Americans, but hundreds of millions of Americans, hundreds of millions of Americans in the category, right? I mean, how many people do we have in this country?
Billion.
You guys know?
No.
I think it's like 350 or so million, if I'm not mistaken. So like, again, you guys can Google check me, right? Somewhere around 350 million. And the numbers I just gave you, like there's like in the diabetic category, a third of them, right? At least. And then in the hypertensive category, there's at least a third of them. And some of them are sharing, like they have both.
Yeah.
Like they have hypertension and type 2 diabetes. It's very, very common.
So, Mr. Morales, just as of last year, there's 329.5 million people in the U.S.
All right, so I'm
You're
a shot
close.
over. And I was going off what I was, because I was in the COVID operations, and we were throwing that number around all the time, 350. So that's like a census number, probably, right?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's why we were like assuming some sort of differential, you know, some sort of delta because of the actual undocumented category.
Yeah.
Which would be included in your statement of like Americans. You know, that the undocumented is still included in that category.
Exactly. Yeah.
So again, there's a lot of people that have chronic kidney disease, and then of those 37 million or so that have chronic kidney disease, today there's somewhere around 750,000 that are getting renal replacement therapies. So dialysis, so they have CKD5, right?
Yeah.
And then there's another good handful. I'll have to defer the number till another meeting, but that are transplanted, so living with transplants.
Mhm. Okay.
So of these stages, there's 5. The last stage is when you need renal replacement therapy. The last stage is when you have what's called ESRD. So ESRD is end stage renal disease.
Yes,
Very
it's- oh, okay. Okay.
Something's dripping on me. I don't know where it's coming from.
Stage renal. You said end stage renal disease?
Yes, end stage renal disease.
ESRD. Okay, D.
It's like my coffee, but I don't know what all right.
Oh, I thought it was coming from the roof.
Well, like I don't know how it's dripping from my coffee though. It's weird. All right, forget. Getting old. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? 1 is the minor side, 5 is the end stage. And by the way, just like if you had kidney failure, right? What would you rather hear? Like you have chronic kidney disease stage 5, or you have kidney failure, or you have end stage renal disease? But better yet, which one would be the hardest for you to hear?
The end stage one, but
Kinda
would you
kinda
have symptoms before that though? Before you get to that point?
Yes, well, you may, but my point about that question is, like, okay, let's say you've already got it, and you've come to grasp it, right? It's reality for you. You've got kidney failure. You're doing dialysis, but when the healthcare team talks to you, do you want them to call it like kidney failure or kidney disease or end stage renal disease?
Oh, I'd prefer they say kidney disease. It sounds
Okay.
better than failure to me.
So I like that you're thinking about it. So end stage renal disease or kidney disease?
I'd prefer kidney disease.
Yeah.
That end stage is a little bit scary because
Yeah, that's the part that but you pointed out another, like, just failure is also very daunting, right?
yes, it is.
So not that we're like sugarcoating the fact of, the matter of fact, but it's less it's kind of like more politically correct or more
Yeah.
socially
I see what you're
socially
saying.
correct.
I see
Yeah,
what you're
you don't want to have like this I mean, one, it's kind of, if they're going to get treatment, end stage renal disease is kind of out of place,
saying.
because end stage is really that terminal, insinuation. Whereas if you're getting dialysis, it's definitely not that. Like, you can have a sustainable life, and the better somebody adjusts to change and self-manages, the longer that and more normal that life can be. So with dialysis, whether it's hemo or peritoneal or transplant, like it's I think end stage renal disease is almost out of place. But I just want to like prep you that when you're talking to patients, you should really think about the words that are coming out of your mouth, and sometimes like medical terminology is not appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Just let them know what's really going on. I get it.
Yeah.
I hear it all the time when I see the doctors walk in with that kind of news, and I wish there'd be a little bit more. I know there's no way to say it, but to say it straight. But sometimes maybe if you just change your tone a little bit and maybe speak a little bit softer, it might show more compassion.
Yeah, and you guys are the techs, right? So like, again, you're treating these people and encouraging them that they can rehabilitate. So
Yeah.
outside of like class or maybe regulation or even internal conversations that don't involve patients, like I wouldn't use end-stage renal disease around your patients or their families.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like the chronic kidney disease, right?
Yes.
And that's, you know, the same thing that they may have been talking about for the last 10 years with their doctor, because
Yeah.
they were diagnosed 10 years ago, and then it's progressively ended up to where they need dialysis, right? So
Yep.
so don't flip it on them and then kind of make this doom and gloom, like, hey, here's the end of the road, your life's almost over. You know, that's definitely not what we want to put out there.
Yeah.
And like I said, stage 5 is where you need renal replacement therapy. But something to take note of as well is that stage 5 is when you would qualify for Medicare. So at stage 5, when you need dialysis, you wouldn't have to go sit before a committee to, you know, and say, hey, I got money, dialyze me. You'd be able to go get treatment and your reimbursement would be there. You wouldn't have to have your town raise money like the milkman, right?
Mhm.
You'd be able to apply for Medicare and have your treatment paid for
Yep.
at stage 5 only. Okay. So at 1, 2, 3, 4, there's no entitlement there.
Okay.
I think that's interesting
Mm-hmm.
that we wait till the end to offer any support. Now we're talking about young people, old people, people of all walks of life, right? That get this kidney failure, but you know, the majority of the reimbursement is going to come at the end of the or the majority of the attention for this, and the whole entitlement is, let's wait till the end when they're a train wreck and it costs a whole lot of money to take care of them to do it, instead of putting even a little bit of money into before the train wrecks, like putting the brakes on, you know, so it like slows down and it's not going to be such a mess when it lands or when it hits or derails or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you'll both be interested in this USRDS, okay? United States Renal Data System. If you just go, and I'll change the note in here, but basically if you just go to that website, they have annual dialysis reports that are like, you can see the cost, the utilization, the number of patients, the modality or treatments that they get, like whether they do it at home or whether they do hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis, or if they have transplant, and their ages and their ethnicities. You can see all the breakdowns of stuff. How many were diabetic and how many were hypertensive, and all kinds of stuff like that. You can, it's really interesting stuff. So I recommend you take a look at that at some time, or maybe periodically throughout your career, just to kind of get a bearing on like the industry as a whole, the national reports. This is going to be the most accurate data you can find on kidney disease and end-stage renal disease. Okay.
Okay.
If you ever do presentations or stuff like that for your clinic and you want to find numbers, that's where you'll go. Okay, ugly table here, but just want to get the point across. You know, the kidneys are really a miraculous organ. They do a lot. The complexity of the kidneys from an anatomical perspective is pretty awesome, but also from the physiologic, like the functions of the kidneys, they do a lot. So you see the first column, the kidneys, right? Just all day long. All day long, they keep your blood in check. And they balance your fluid, your electrolytes, your pH or potential of hydrogen, and eliminate waste from your blood through excretion, like when you pee. And then the kidneys also have action in hormones, either to make or to activate, like in the case of vitamin D, which will control and stimulate absorption of calcium from your diet. And in the case of erythropoietin, which will stimulate your bone marrow to make red blood cells. And then in the case of renin, which will stimulate reabsorption of sodium and help to control your blood pressure on the day-to-day. So your kidneys do all of that all the time. Okay, 24/7, 365, right?
Yep.
Or let's call it on a weekly, they do it 168 hours a week without any breaks, no laps. But then let's look at dialysis, like just the standard dialysis, okay? There can be better numbers on this stuff if the patient is doing, let's say, so when I say balancing fluid and all those first four things, the balance of fluid, electrolytes, pH, and waste. The kidneys do that 24/7, but the patient who has kidney failure and then needs dialysis, they only get that 3 to 5 hours during their treatment and 3 times a week. So what is that? Like 9 to 15 hours a week, right? Of replacement. Out of the 168 hours, only 9 to 15, right? And then with the hormones, those hormonal actions that I talked about, like the vitamin D and the erythropoietin and the renin, that dialysis can't replace that. So when you lose that function from your kidneys, the nurses have to give medications to replace those hormones. In the case of the first two. The third one, the renin, they don't have to replace that. But with vitamin D and erythropoietin, they have to replace it with medication. And then even with all of that stuff we do, the 3 to 5 hours, 3 times a week, and the medication replacements, is that 100% replacement of what the kidneys do?
Not on dialysis, no.
Like, no way. It's only like maybe 15%. Okay, 15%. Standard and center dialysis. The regimen that I just laid out for you only replaces about 15%. So what else does a patient have to do? Or what else do we do to help the patient to replace function or minimize, like, well, let me ask you that. If you're only replacing 15%, do you think the patient is going to be symptom free?
No.
Yeah, all patients are going to have stuff going on here or there, right? Maybe too much fluid, maybe high electrolyte level or low electrolyte level. Maybe they're having problems with anemia, or maybe they're having problem with their bones because of their calcium levels. So to minimize those effects, those problems from the loss of kidney function, the patient has to show up to dialysis. The nurses have to give the medications, but the patients have medications for home too.
That was my next question. Yeah,
they got like things that are going to work on certain nutrition elements, like phosphorus binders that they have to take with every meal they eat, they got to take this pill, so that like if you ate you know, a sandwich or something, like you take these pills with it, and when the phosphorus releases from that food in your gut, it will the binder will grab it, and then the patient will move that phosphorus out of their body in their bowel, so it'll make it pass their stool through their poop, right?
Yeah.
And otherwise, if they didn't take those, it would end up in their blood and make it like really, really high. So they got to do things like that, take, you know, extra medications. Then they got to watch their diet itself.
Yeah.
Like, and more than half of the time, diet's a big part of the reason why they're in that chair. So don't expect them to be perfect, right? With their diet. Like if they've been a type 2 diabetic for 20 years, it's going to be a real challenge to get on what we would call, like, you know, a healthy diet.
Yeah. Oh.
You guys good?
Yeah. So one question real quick, Mr. Morales. So for the secrete renin stimulants, our body automatically does it. Why isn't it important for dialysis? There's nothing that they do for that, or?
No, because renin makes your, I mean, to keep it really simple, renin is going to make your blood pressure go up. When a patient has kidney failure, we're not so concerned about them having like bringing their blood pressure up. We're concerned with them having low blood. Sorry, let me say that again. So when the patient comes in, they are going to be hypertensive because of fluid retention.
That makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Okay.
We're not trying to bring their blood pressure up even higher.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's no need to replace the renin.
Okay.
Who's that? Alexandria Dominguez. Who is that?
Alexandra from yesterday, the dialysis tech in Texas.
No. Good morning. That's my daughter's name. This is Laura. I'm using her computer because mine was not working.
Oh, oops. Hi,
and
Laura.
I didn't good morning. I didn't realize her name showed up. I don't know how to change it on there.
No problem. I just want to make sure it's with our class.
Like someone's getting a free lesson here, Mr. Morales.
That'd be okay. No problem. Just want to make sure that's what they're here for.
Okay.
All right. So again, we high leveled so far. I was going to call you Alexandria, Laura. We high level discussed just. I'll go back to a slide. We can rehash, no problem. Just the number of people with CKD in the United States, or the estimated numbers. We also discussed that CKD doesn't mean that you need dialysis necessarily. There are stages of CKD, 1 through 5, and 5 being what's termed as end-stage renal disease. That's the point where, Laura, were you able to watch the video we talked about the other day?
I did. I watched it. It's just incredible. I don't know. I don't have words.
Yeah, it blows your mind, huh?
It does.
Like a really eye-opening, sad, but I think a good piece of history to know.
You know what?
How it was.
The veteran who he said something like he was so defiant of requesting help from the government for different things, like his education, like his posing home. He qualified for all of those because he was a veteran. But then when he needed the help, he didn't get it. You know, it's just.
Yeah, that was my favorite. That was my favorite.
Yeah, Kenlyn brought that up too, and just a stubborn guy, right? Standing on his principle.
Yeah, but I think he was looking at everything as a whole, saying, well, why should he, you know, if everyone else is suffering and people are just picking certain people to live and just let the others go. And yeah, it was very touching. Very touching.
We also said that stage 5 is where, you know, people don't have to go through that anymore, right? Medicare is going to cover the cost, and you don't have to sit before a committee or come up with a bunch of money. You just apply for Medicare, and upon approval, you'll have reimbursement for your treatment, right? For your dialysis treatment. And by the way, even if you hadn't been approved for Medicare yet, you would still get treatment from a dialysis center, and they would be helping you go through that application, and all of the treatments they give you while you're not approved would be retroactively paid once the approval happened. Does that make sense?
Are we talking about today or in the history?
Talking about today. Yeah, today.
Wow, even today. Got it.
Yeah. Okay, so I also brought up a website, Laura, that is called the United States Renal Data System, or the USRDS. You can Google that, look up their website, and it gives you like an annual dialysis report that will break down like CKD and ESRD, everything about it, the cost of that year, the number of patients, the number of diabetics and hypertensives and others, and the ethnicities and the sexes, and what sort of treatments people are getting, whether they're getting hemo or peritoneal, and whether they're doing it at home or in the center. So all that kind of stuff is broken down every year. And it's going to be the most accurate source for data on utilization, I guess you would say, of with CKD and ESRD. Then we just high-leveled what the kidneys do, so that we can start to understand and appreciate the losses that patients have as far as the excretory and endocrine functions. And then we pointed out that dialysis is a replacement therapy, but it's not 100%, right? It's only effective and doing the jobs that, or the replacement functions of the kidneys while the patient is sitting in the chair getting dialysis, which on average is 3 to 5 hours per treatment, 3 times a week. And then as far as the endocrine functions, dialysis can't replace that, right? That the registered nurses will have to be giving patients medication replacements for activated vitamin D or calcitriol, for erythropoietin. So they'll be giving ESA medications, erythropoiesis stimulating agents. And then as far as the hormone renin, there's no need to replace renin, because when patients have kidney failure, they typically have hypertension, and we don't need to give them a hormone to try and bring their blood pressure up. It's already high. Renin is response to hypotension, right? Or hypovolemia. So this 15% is the approximate value of standard in-center dialysis as far as a replacement value to kidneys. Doesn't do the whole job. We said the gaps are going to be filled with more medications at home, right? Like phosphorus binders and antihypertensives are very common medications that your patients will be taking. And then nutrition and dietary discretions advices. So like we draw blood frequently on our patients, and then the licensed members of the team, like the physician, the dietitian, the nurse, they assess those results and make adjustments to the plan of care based off of those results. So there may be like, a patient is going to get more, like they run 4 hours, and then the doctor says, we're going to have to change your prescription to 4 hours and 15 minutes from now on, because this blood test came back as inadequate. A little bit of time is going to get you to where you need to be, right? So things like that. Or the dietitian might say like, hey, Mr. Morales, like we really need to focus on avoiding foods that are high in phosphorus, because your phosphorus has been really high lately. What have you been eating lately? And I'm like, well, I really like fruit, right? Because my mom or my grandma or my hometown, like we grow fruit or whatever, and I was always told fruit's going to keep me healthy, right? So I love fruit. And what have you been eating lately? Oh, it's melon season, right? It's cantaloupe. I ate some cantaloupe. You know, I've been having fresh cantaloupes in my pantry or whatever. So okay, Mr. Morales, like cantaloupe is high in potassium. So that could be what's, you know, making you spike lately. When you eat those type of foods, it's important that you consider, like, let's go over the things that are really high in potassium, but also two, let's learn how to portion them so you can still eat the things you like, but you don't eat so much that it makes your blood high in potassium or high in whatever, right? Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
So it's a constant. Like, I mean, today I'm doing good. You know, next week they draw my blood and I'm not doing good, and the dietitian going to come sit down and talk to me. So the gap, you know, when we say 100% and 15% with dialysis, right? Like the gap, that 85%, like we're not going to cover it all, but what we can cover through like self-management, medications, nutrition, things like that, is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Okay, so here's what I want to make this slide, like what I want you to take home from this slide or take away is, one, for sure, everybody needs to know what the kidneys do, okay? Because your job as a dialysis tech or dialysis nurse is to deliver a treatment that is there to replace those functions, right? So you need to know what the kidneys do or did for your patients. Then yes, you do need to know what dialysis can replace. But the theme of this is like, what if the patient had more time or more days on the machine? What would that do for replacement value? And then what would that do for all the extra work they have in between treatment? So like this, guys, if I go 3 times a week, 12 hours of the week, right? 4 hours each time, let's say 4 hours each time. And then that's 12 hours on the machine. And then how many hours a week in regular life? 156, right? There's 168 hours in a week. So 156 hours left. And where's that time? Is that in the dialysis center? No.
Oh, that's at home.
Yeah, that's me living my life.
Mm-hmm.
And me living my life in many of the cases with like type 2 diabetes and hypertension got me to the point where I need dialysis. So we need to understand that like dialysis is important, but damn it, so is the 156 hours that they're alone. So that's the hard work, right? Of watching their diet, exercising, taking medications, things like this. So what if we gave them more time on the machine? Would they still have the same intensity of work in between? Like, will they have as many medications? Will they have as many restrictions or limitations on their diet? Or would it be less? What is your guys' thoughts? So let me ask another way, just to give you another way to think of it. If you spent like 8 hours a day in school versus you spent an hour and a half in school, how much studying do you think you would need to do? Which one do you think you'd have to study more on your own?
The 1 hour one.
Yeah. So you got homework, right?
Yeah.
And the same with dialysis is like less time on the machine, more homework.
Mm-hmm.
More time on the machine. What?
Less homework.
Less homework. The job's easier. The self-management's easier. But who wants to spend more time on the machine, right?
Yeah.
Like that's that. Like let's just face it. Like I'll tell you, there's a form of dialysis called nocturnal dialysis, right? Where patients can stay on the machine for like 6 to 8 hours.
Oh wow.
And it's considered the best way to do dialysis. It's the most effective way to do it. But there's like maybe, and I'm giving a strong maybe 1% of the patients that do that type of therapy. Who wants to sit on the machine that long, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, the nocturnal kind of gives you that insinuation that it's while you sleep, but who can sleep while they're on dialysis? And then where are you going to get that done? We'll talk more about that, how available these modalities are.
Okay.
So the treatment for kidney failure, the primary treatment in the United States is dialysis. And I would say not just the United States, worldwide. Primary treatment for kidney failure is dialysis in one of its forms. So there's two types of dialysis. There's hemodialysis, which like we take blood out of the person's body, run it through a filter, and then run it back into them. Or there's peritoneal dialysis, where there's no blood taken out of the body, but more a solution that is infused into the body, into the peritoneum, into the abdominal cavity. So it's not a extracorporeal process, not a process where we take blood out of the body. It's a process where we put a solution into the body. So dialysis as that main treatment has both types of dialysis have a few, I guess, commonalities in their ability to replace function, but also in their requirements. So we'll talk about first, like the functions that dialysis can replace. It's not everything. Dialysis cannot touch the hormone actions of the kidneys or the hormone functions of the kidneys. So like the vitamin D, the activated vitamin D, right? Calcitriol, dialysis can't replace that. Erythropoietin, or the stimulation of red blood cells in the bone marrow, red blood cell production in the bone marrow, the dialysis can't do that. And then as far as renin, if there was a need to replace it, dialysis doesn't do that either. But what can dialysis do? That dialysis can do the same things that your kidneys do to produce urine. Okay, so it can remove waste from your blood or eliminate waste, filter waste. It can remove excess fluid or balance fluid. And then it can balance chemistries like electrolytes and potential of hydrogen or power of hydrogen, or what's called pH. Okay, so dialysis can do that. But remember, the kidneys, they do it 24 hours a day, right? Dialysis can only do that during the time that you're sitting on that chair or connected to that machine. It doesn't do anything in between the treatment. So it has to do a lot really, really quickly. I mean, anybody like run, you guys do any running, like marathon or half marathon or 5K or 2K or anything like that?
I did when I was younger, several marathons and half marathons and 5Ks.
All right. Okay, so cool. So nobody ever says they do that when I ask that question. Like, do you know what is the time of like the world class people who win the marathon? How long does it take them to run a marathon?
Oh man, like 2 hours, a little bit over 2 hours.
That's insane. So they're running, what was it, 26 miles, something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
26.2 miles or something?
Oh,
26 miles.
26.2 miles is the mileage, yes.
Yeah, so they're running that far in 2 hours. That's insane, right? How long did it take you to run it?
Not a lot. My best time was 10-minute miles.
10-minute miles. So you took, how long is that?
My best time in doing those 26 miles. That's what I average. So and then you have to take into account potty breaks and other breaks and stuff like that. So I think my best time was 4 hours or 4.5 hours, something like that.
That sounds pretty incredible still. I mean, and a 10-minute miles, like a good pace, right?
But my worst time was like 8 hours. It was a whole day.
So what if somebody told you like, hey, I need you to run the marathon or I'm going to kill you in the world class time?
I said, just kill me.
Like, hey, gun to your head the whole way. Run it
Just get it over with.
in 2 hours. All right. Like, would you do it? Could you do it? I don't know. Like, probably not, right? But what if you did? What if you took your body that on your best time was 4 hours, like 2 times longer than what these world-class people do it at, right? Still an amazing time, by the way. But like, yeah, not the world-class pace, but you have to run it at that pace, and you do run at that pace, which Laura, it sounds like even at the prime of your running, your body was not in that shape to run it at the world class. So what if your body did that? What would happen?
Does that strain your body though? It's not good if you.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, what if you push yourself harder, like faster than you can do it? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, people have died doing them. Have you heard of that? People have died doing them because they push. It's amazing what the human body can withstand until it can't anymore.
Yeah. So like some people can do it, huh? But not everybody can do that. And it takes a lot of tolerance to get to that point, right? So what if I told you like, hey, you know, your kidneys run a marathon every day, right? And now we're going to run that marathon in 4 hours. Your kidneys do it over 24 hours. Now we're going to do it on dialysis, but we're going to do it in 4 hours. It's the same thing, right? Like we're trying to do too much in too short of a time. And how do you think you're going to feel? Let's say you didn't die, okay, Laura, you didn't die, but did you die, right? Like you didn't die. How are you going to feel after pushing your body like that?
Exhausted.
Yeah.
Wow.
Possibly more than exhausted, right? Possibly like in the hospital, possibly like, you know, some sort of therapeutic devices or things like this, an IV, all kinds of stuff like that, right? And maybe days of recovery, weeks maybe even, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think a dialysis patient feels after what their kidneys are supposed to do 24 hours of the day and 7 days a week, actually? But we try and cram all that week into 12 hours.
Oh, tired.
Yeah, they feel tired.
Yeah.
They're wiped out after treatment. They call it dialysis hangover or the fog in the standard treatment. So I think we talked about this the other day, but like, do you think that if you had to be at dialysis from 8 to noon and then afterwards you felt like you ran a marathon too fast, right? Do you think you're going to work afterwards?
No, they're going to be tired.
Yeah. I mean, what if like Laura, you have younger children, right?
Yes.
Like what do you think that's going to be like?
For me, how would that be? It'd be very difficult to try to raise my kids, and you know they have so much energy right now. Even if I'm not on dialysis, I can't keep up with them.
Well, you said it the other day. You're a young, hardworking nurse, and you know sometimes it kicks your butt, and then you know mommy's down for the day, and you don't like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine like kidney failure, this age, right? Pace you run, the pace your kids run. And taking 4 hours out of it, okay, okay, we can deal with that. But after the 4 hours, it takes like 7 to 8 hours for you to feel better again or feel normal again. Like pretty much call this day over, huh?
Yeah.
Like let me see you guys tomorrow. That's what you're going to be saying to your kids, right? I'll see you tomorrow when I feel better.
Mr. Morales, you're saying that doing for a 4-hour kidneys, 4-hour hemodialysis therapy, it takes about 8 hours for the patient to recover from it?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. The highest selection in the polls that I've seen from patients is that it takes 7+ hours to recover. 7+ hours. So yeah, it's a rough day afterwards. And I think I told you my uncle used to like to do it 7 to midnight for that very reason. Like he did it at home, and then all of us knew how to take care of him. So you know, he would dialyze When he was done, we'd stop the bleeding in his arm, then he'd go to bed, and we'd be the ones, staying up to strip down the machine, take out all the supplies, disinfect it, stuff like that.
Wow.
And then he'd wake up the next day and feel good. So he saved that hangover for when he was asleep.
Yeah.
And dialysis centers are always morning, aren't they not?
They're always wet.
They're always in the daytime, morning, like 8 to 5 hours.
No, they're typically probably 4 a.m. It depends on how many shifts they run, but I've worked in clinics that are open 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. 4 or 5 shifts.
So potentially the last dialysis treatment would be 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. type thing.
Maybe last, I think the latest patient I've ever put on is 6:30.
So that seems to be ideal for our dialysis patients, is not to have it done at night.
To have it done at night?
Yeah, till they wake up.
Well, if they wanna, if they're thinking to work and like you said, to just kind of be able to go home and crash out, not worry about losing daylight, then yeah, it's good for them. But you'll see that, and I wish it was different. I wish I didn't have to be saying this, but it's just really common to see patients just kind of submit to this whole thing. Okay, I can't work anymore. I can't do anything anymore. My life is just now dialysis, and back and forth to dialysis and to the doctor and the podiatrist. They get in that. It's easy to become apathetic, right? And just like I said, give up, submit to the whole thing, and hey, I want to get on as early as possible. Typically I see patients wanting to get that first shift, that 4 a.m. They're not jumping to get the last shift of the day. But you will see, I've had a handful of patients that still work. They've always been the last shift of the day for that reason. And you see the patients that drive themselves to dialysis and back home on that shift, where the rest of the day it's you got non-emergent and not emergent transportation bringing them in, or ambulance bringing them in, on a gurney or something like that, from nursing homes and stuff like that. So yeah, the last shift will be your more thriving patients usually. Okay, so you understand again that dialysis cannot replace everything, right?
Yep.
That there's a lot of homework for the patient. There's a lot of ancillaries, like medications that will be given in the clinic as well as at home, the nutrition, and then just overall lifestyle. I mean, if there's ever a time where it's hey, you need to start living a healthy lifestyle, it's when you have kidney failure, because your timeline is accelerating. The trajectory towards the grave is much faster when you have kidney failure than it was before. So these are the requirements. Simple. It seems simple, right? It's 3 things. This is what you need for dialysis. That's all you need. It really is. So you need what do the kidneys do? They process blood all day long. They filter blood, and they filter the volume of your blood many times over throughout the day. So their blood processing, they're actually per mass, they have the highest blood requirement, again, per mass of any organ in your body. They take up 25% of the cardiac output. Every beat, quarter of your blood flow goes to your kidneys. So if you're going to replace the function of the kidneys, you got to get access to the blood so you can process it. And there's different ways to do that with hemo or peritoneal dialysis. With hemo, you got to take the blood out of the body. With peritoneal, you don't need to take the blood out of the body. You just put a solution in the body, and I'll explain more about that. But you guys are coming for mainly hemo, not to say that you won't end up with some function in peritoneal dialysis, because with peritoneal dialysis, that's like self-care at home, and it's a really good modality for people to utilize. It's underutilized, but we are in a strong push to help more patients to do dialysis at home. Did I mention this the other day, that by 2025 that we need to, there's a government initiative to have 50% of the new patients that start dialysis doing it at home?
Yes, you did.
In the centers, yeah. Okay. So access to blood is one, and with hemodialysis, it's really simple to get the access to blood. There's a surgery that will be performed that will create a internal vascular access in probably their arm. It basically changes their vein, the way their vein is. It changes the flow of a vein. So you can connect an artery and a vein together, and it will create something called a fistula that will put needles into it. Just basically a big vein. Okay. And then there's also artificial materials that can be done to create that vein, called a graft. So in perfect scenario, all the patients would have something that we could put a needle into. Okay. But a lot of patients are like they have vascular disease from diabetes or hypertension, and maybe they don't have good enough veins or arteries in their arm to get those surgeries performed. So they'll have tubes that are stuck in their neck or their chest or their growing area into a central vein, okay, called catheters. So again, one way or another with hemodialysis, we got to have a way to take blood out of the body from the patient so that we can then run it through a filter or a semi-permeable membrane. And the filter in hemodialysis is called a dialyzer. Okay, it's kind of like about the size of a spray can, and we'll have plenty of images of these down the line. But it's the artificial kidney. It's a cartridge that the blood will flow through. And when it flows through that dialyzer, the blood will be cleansed. It will be changed, okay, through several scientific principles, including filtration, diffusion, osmosis, ultrafiltration, and convection. So there's a lot of scientific application or scientific law application inside of that dialyzer, okay? But a semi-permeable membrane basically is like, again, to keep it simple, it's the same concept of like a tea bag or a vegetable strainer. Like if you put vegetables in the vegetable strainer and you wash them, the vegetables don't pass through and end up in your sink because they're bigger than the holes, right? But the water passes through because it's smaller. So that's how a dialyzer works, is as a semi-permeable membrane that allows things that are smaller than the holes to pass through, and things that are larger would be retained.
Mr. Morales, did you say that in outpatient clinic they also use the catheters?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought that was just inpatient for emergencies or short-term dialysis. I didn't realize at home on those.
No, even in the outpatient, and then also patients who do it at home could be catheter patient as well.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's like last resort, of course, like for patients that have no other option because of their vascular integrity. So it's like, you know, we hate catheters. I think that's probably across the board in healthcare. It doesn't matter what type of catheter, right? We're like, we hate them because they have the high risk. Yeah, just such a. Say it again.
High rates of there could be always infection with those, and it goes directly into.
Yeah.
So
whether regardless of what type of catheter, there's that risk of infection, right? Yes. And with a central venous catheter, the infection, like the severity of it is alarming because it could be like bloodstream infection, septicemia, stuff like this. Mm-hmm. So the first two things, again, the access to the blood so that you can get that solution, run it through the semi-permeable membrane, the dialyzer. And then in the dialyzer, there are two compartments, okay? There's a compartment where blood flows, and then there's a compartment where this other solution called dialysate flows. And to do dialysis, whether it's hemo or peritoneal, you basically need two solutions separated by a membrane. And if you look at the slide right now, you have a solution called blood and then a solution called dialysate separated by a membrane. Okay, so two solutions separated by a membrane. When you separate two solutions with a membrane, or I should say, when you have two solutions, and even let's say you mix two solutions, then you'll have one equal solution, right? If you just poured two solutions into the same container, you'll have one solution after that. They will mix, they will equilibrate.
Mm-hmm.
If you separate them by a membrane and pour them into separate sides of the membrane, they will do the same thing. They will equilibrate, but they will have to pass through the membrane to do that. So with a membrane, remember, only things that are small enough to pass through can pass through. So blood and dialysate are separated by a membrane, and they're just trying to do what two solutions do when they're next to each other and equilibrate. They're trying to get like each other. Dialysate is a specially formulated solution that the doctor will prescribe concentrations of. So the doctor says the dialysate should have this much potassium, this much sodium, this much calcium, magnesium, etc., right? And it's always fresh. So it's safe to say that the dialysate is what the blood should look like from an electrolyte composition. Like the concentrations of electrolytes in the dialysate are what we're trying to bring the patient's blood to. Okay, so we call it the bath. And I think it's a good term, right? It's bathing the blood. That's the soap. You know, no dialysate, no dialysis. Okay, you need dialysate. It's not just filtering blood through it's not just running blood through a filter dialysis. You need that other solution to equilibrate and correct the electrolyte levels of the blood.
Interesting. Okay. Two main kinds of dialysis. Okay.
So the two types of dialysis, peritoneal dialysis is one, and we're going to, again, keep this high level because we are going to drill this down more, but just orienting right now, okay?
Okay.
We have the access, and it's not access to blood per se, it's access to an internal cavity. So it is a catheter, but it's not a central venous catheter. It's not going into blood. It's going into an abdominal cavity called the peritoneal cavity. Okay, and if you can imagine, you know, of course, it doesn't look like a bag shape, right? But your abdominal cavity, let's say the black lining of it, that black lining would actually be like a complex web of capillaries, blood vessels. What's inside of a blood vessel is blood, right? A blood vessel is actually a membrane. So it allows things that are smaller than the pores to pass through and retains things that are larger. So inside of the blood vessel, the blood vessel itself, or that lining made up of blood vessels called the peritoneum, is the membrane. That's the filter. And then what the patient will do is they'll take a bag of sterile dialysate and they'll fill their belly full of this dialysate. And after they fill their belly, they'll clamp off their catheter and they'll go to work or go writing, you know, write their books or go exercise or go take care of their kids or whatever. Take care of their furry kids. So they'll go about their day, and it'll be like a dwell time. There'll be a time that fluid will sit in their belly, And then at the end of that dwell time, they'll come to a place where they can perform their procedure. And what they'll do is they'll connect this catheter to a bag that they'll put on the ground. And they'll drain all the fluid that's in their belly out. And then they'll fill it with fresh dialysate again. It takes about a half hour. It's called an exchange. So they're trading the old stuff for new stuff, right? And again,
How many hours in between treatments, Mr. Morales, for the PD?
I'm sorry, say it again, Laura.
How many hours between treatments with the PD? Is it like every night they do this or every morning?
It depends on the prescription, but it will probably be somewhere between a 3 to 4 hour dwell time on the manual exchanges. And then in the night, if they do it at night, they won't do it like this. They'll connect to a machine that will fill and empty their belly several times while they're asleep, maybe 3-4 times with an hour or 2 hour dwell. But the doctor will set up those dwell times. It's not like a fix, like everybody does it for this long.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. And then I'm glad you said that, because like what you're looking at is just an illustration of what would be called CAPD, continuous ambulatory peritoneal dialysis.
Is this
Yes.
the preferred way for children? Preferred method for children?
PD?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, absolutely. It's much, I mean, chemo is very dynamic. It's traumatizing. So
Mr.
yeah.
Morales, could you repeat that again? CAPPD is continuous ambulatory peritoneal what again?
It's continuous ambulatory peritoneal dialysis.
Okay.
And then there's another form called CCPD, continuous cycling peritoneal dialysis. And that's where they would be like connected to a machine while they're asleep. And that machine would do the drain and fill for them. So some patients are only on CAPD, and then while they sleep, they don't do anything. Some patients are only on CCPD, and while they're awake, they don't do anything. And some are on both. The ideal situation would be they're on both, because that truly is continuous, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the thing about peritoneal dialysis, so I love this modality, okay? I'll tell you, if I needed dialysis, this would be my go-to. I'd be like, can I do PD? If I qualify, that's what I want to do until I can't do it anymore, which there probably will be a day when I can't do it anymore. Scarring on the peritoneum, possible infection, something like that. So I just consider like, and I think for you guys, you should also start to be familiar with, like, if I do dialysis, this is a lifelong commitment. Or if I have kidney failure, this is a lifelong commitment. My kidneys aren't going to start up again. So
Sometimes it's temporary, though. I've seen it in the inpatient setting.
that's on the acute side. Okay,
Yeah.
that's on the acute side. So we will talk about that. But that's and when you say sometimes, it's not a great statistic as far as like recovery, even with acute kidney failure. So what I'm saying is, like, with once it's deemed chronic, right? That this is a lifelong commitment, and treatment options and modalities can be temporary. So you could do peritoneal dialysis while you're on the transplant list, and then you get a transplant, and then you had a transplant for 10 years, and then it started to fail or decline, and you went back, you needed dialysis again, but maybe at that point you can't get peritoneal. So you got to go to hemo. And then you could do what? Standard in center, or you could do it at home, and you could do it for standard regimen, like 3 times a week, or maybe you could do it every day. Maybe you could do it longer hours. So the treatment choice and the modalities, they might change many times. So you guys did a great job of, thank you so much for looking at the video, guys. Like, I really appreciate when the class is responsive to my request to do more than what's just the required, because that's where you're going to get your nuggets, right? And you guys will teach each other, and just based off the way I saw you guys research today, I know you will teach each other. So here's another assignment, okay? Lori Hartwell, LORIHARTWELL, Lori Hartwell. And if you can't find her by her name, then Renal Support Network, RSN, Renal Support Network. Okay, so I want you to look her up. And then about let me get the spelling for you. Another friend. And then Nancy Hewitt Spaeth. I'm going to put it in the text or the chat, her name. Let's start with those. I'll ask you guys to look up people, okay? And a lot of times people are kind of thrown by my ask here, but like we don't have stories, you know. I mean, we need stories, because here's what you're gonna see is people come in and the average case, okay, just a stereotypical case is somebody who starts dialysis and then just continues to get in worse and worse shape and have a decline in quality of life, their health, and then, you know, succumb, right? That's like a standard case scenario, right? It's depressing. It's tough to watch, and it might actually be hard to find hope in all of that, even for you guys. You're professionals, right? Yeah. But like, like, hey, I want to come help people get better. But what's normally happening is they're not getting better. It's just, you know, they have sustainment of life. They have an extension of their life as it would be. So it's like, well, hey, come on, you know, you could do anything you want, Mr. Morales. Like you want to finish that doctorate degree, go back to school, you know, you can do it. Just take care of yourself, you know, make sure you come into your treatments and or doing your treatments and taking your meds and watching your diet and exercise. And you can do whatever you want, right? So like we're here talking this big game. And I think a lot of times people are not really honest with themselves that they don't even believe what they're saying. As a healthcare professional, like I don't even believe it. Like I'm telling you, it's going to be all good, right? But what have I seen for the last 5 years of my career? It's like just a decline in health, decline in quality of life, all this kind of stuff, right? So it's like, okay, you probably don't have these stories of patients triumphing, you know, of these patients who after kidney failure, like all their dreams come true. You're not going to see that too often. So go look at these two people, and the reason I chose those two people is because they're both highly successful individuals that did it despite having kidney failure and have been through every modality. They've been through it all. Lori, since she was a kid, like 2 years old, and Nancy, since I want to say since she was like right out of high school. They're both good friends of mine. They're both beautiful people. And they both work harder than most people I know without kidney failure. So I want to say, like, you need to see stories of triumph and people who, despite kidney failure, have, you know, gone on to live the lives they want, or maybe it wasn't the life they want, but have gone on to what do you want to say, like make lemons out of lemonade, they've got kidney failure. But like in the case of Lori, she opened a patient for patient peer support group, non-for-profit charity called Renal Support Network. She does great stuff, great work. Nancy became a nurse and has spoken all over the world about her kidney failure. So see what you can dig up on them, and let's kind of focus it towards treatment option and modality this discussion, although we'll talk about them again, more towards like coping with kidney failure. And like I said, like the need for triumphant stories. I'll give you other names as well to look up, people who just, kick life in the butt after kidney failure. Actually, I'll give you one just to throw it off right now. Shad Ireland, SHAD, Ireland, like the country. That one's going to blow your mind.
Is that one of yours too? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is that one a friend of yours, Mr. Morales, also? You know him?
Not. I know him. He's not. I wouldn't call us friends. We've crossed each other's paths in conferences and stuff like that, and had some emails. And we're friendly, but like I haven't like got too personal with him. But Lori, I've known since I was a kid, and Nancy, I've known since I was a professional, but pretty much I was a kid at that time too. But Lori, literally, I met when I was a teenager because my aunt was a nephrology nurse, and I used to go to all the conventions and stuff. And I met Lori early on as this young lady who had written books and started these nonprofit charity groups, and just people were like really gravitating towards. But she's awesome, man. She sits like with congressmen and senators and stuff, and the local community leaders as well. She's got a direct connect as far as the lobbying efforts, because she's educated, she's tied into the community, and she speaks on behalf of the patients, for policies, on different policies.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, look up Shad. He's got a super cool story as well. Laura, did you have something to add to that?
I was just gonna ask. I wonder, like, a lot of people turn down. I've seen people turn down dialysis because they're like, I don't want to live like that. And so these ideas of what dialysis is, or maybe they've seen someone going through it, and that I don't know. It's just because right now it seems like we're gonna have a contrast, a huge contrast between these three very successful people who went through dialysis and what we tend to see as patients from what you're saying.
That's why, that's exactly why I want you to see it is, there can be an adversity, and let's just say it this way. Like, some people deal with adversity better than others. That's just straight to the point, right? It might be because they've had other adversities that prepared them for adversity. Maybe they've had trials in life before, and they've developed that indomitable spirit. But there's like a different level of resilience to people, and some people, like, they have kidney failure, they have stroke, they have different things like this, and it's just like a challenge to them, or a charge to them, to show the universe that, like, I can still do it. So I'm just going to spoil it. We're going to get ahead because you got to see Sam Trevino's story as well. Sam Trevino. Yeah. And he's this guy's like a brother to me. And he's the only man that ever made me cry. Listening to his story, and I've heard it before, and he can still make me cry.
How do you spell his last name?
Trevino.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, super good guy. But yeah, look these people's story up, and like you said, it's going to be a contrast. It's not going to be a contrast of how hard stuff can get, how down life can be. It's the same, it's the same story, but it's more the difference. The contrast is like, hey, I was down, and then I said, like, what's that big movement for cancer? You guys know that movement for cancer? Have you guys seen it? F cancer, right?
Oh yeah.
Some people take that attitude, right?
Oh yeah.
And just like fight back. And you're going to see that in all these individuals to the point where they're like, hey, I did it, you can do it. And these things need to be known. You guys need to steal their stories is what I'm telling you. You have to steal their stories so that you can tell patients with a true heart that you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
That you can still, you can see your kids graduate, your grandkids graduate, your grandkid be born. You can write that book. You can go to school. You can start a company. You can tell your story and help hundreds of thousands of other people in the United States. You're going to see that from all those people I just mentioned.
Are they all local to Southern California?
No, Lori's Glendale, Sam is Texas, Shad, I want to say like Ohio. Who else did I give you? Somebody.
Sam Trevino, Shad, and Nancy.
Nancy is I think Seattle. Yeah.
Okay.
So peritoneal dialysis, good option. By the way, about the majority of the patients who do dialysis at home use this option. There's probably somewhere around 12 to 13% of the patients that do dialysis in the country do it at home. 10 to 11% is peritoneal dialysis. A very small representation of home hemodialysis. Oh, and just some other notes on PD. It is meant for self-care. So it's not meant to have like a need for a tech or a nurse or anything like that. Meant for home care, travel, all that kind of stuff, super easy with this. And by the way, your employer cannot discriminate against you for having to go to the bathroom every 3 to 4 hours and spend half hour, and they can't ask you to go to the bathroom either. They got to provide a room that is acceptable for this procedure. So a clean room without circulation, privacy, because you're gonna be exposing kind of like the pelvic area and doing that exchange. So we'll come back to PD, okay? Hemodialysis, same thing. We need access. I talked to you about a fistula or a graft or a catheter. We need a membrane, which is this filter called a dialyzer. And then we need a solution to run in the membrane at the same time. Majority of the patients that do hemodialysis do it in a center. They do it 3 times a week, average 4 hours of treatment. That's standard in center. They only replace about 15% of their kidney function. They got a lot of homework. This can be done at home as well on the same like time and frequency, or it can be done more frequently, and it can be done for longer periods of time. When you guys look up Nancy, pay attention and try and find something about her talking or writing about nocturnal dialysis, okay? Because when she started dialysis, she did it for like 10, 12 hours, something like that, every treatment. And she's a big proponent that more patients should be doing nocturnal because you feel almost normal. Your blood chemistries are almost normal. You have very little homework as far as like watching your diet and taking medications and stuff like that. Much easier. And you don't take...
Mr. Morales?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I need to go right now because I have an appointment.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Yeah, we're almost done. So, and I'll send this recording to you guys as well.
So, Mr. Morales, you said you're going to email it to us, the recording, or how do we act? Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
I'm going to actually have Deneen start plugging them into the class as well. But for now, I'll email it to you guys. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Just FYI, the link to get into the class comes off at 8:15, I think. So that was my issue. So maybe it was in my computer, but instead I couldn't find the link.
Oh, because okay. Yeah. I'll have her send you the links individually, or so you can have them on your calendar instead. Because yeah, it's for the what do you call it? The attendance. There's a certain time period. So I'll talk to her about that.
Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, shoot.
Did you sign in from the calendar?
No, I just went into my email and
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'll talk to her today, and then we'll just check you guys off. Just try and check in through the link, okay?
Yeah, no, I do click the link that she sent me on my email, and then it brings me to this page, and then I just open up the video.
Yeah, no, there's a link in the classroom that will like log your attendance. I'll check with her this afternoon how it logged you, but try and go through the classroom itself.
It's only open from 7:55 to 8:15, I think.
Yeah, I'll see if she can open up that window for you.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. All right, so we don't have too many slides here. Do you guys mind if we go to about 9:45?
Oh yeah, no, I don't mind.
I don't
Okay.
mind.
So an instrumental, and again, just high level. We'll come drill this down a little bit more this week. But there's CMS oversight because in 1972 there was a law that passed that included end-stage renal disease patients as Medicare beneficiaries. So you qualify for Medicare if you have CKD5, and with that, Medicare made up a bunch of rules and created like survey processes so that they can make sure we're following the rules. They contract with like the State Department of Public Health. Here in California, that'd be the California Department of Public Health. In Alabama, I'm not sure what the entity is, but it's probably something similar, where they would go into the facility and they would survey the facility with a tool from Medicare to make sure that we're following the conditions for coverage. And if they find deficiency, I think probably both of you have been through survey before, right? Where they write a statement of deficiency, and then the clinic has to create a plan of correction and submit that and get it accepted. Otherwise, there's penalty, right? Like you could lose your funding from Medicare, or you could have to close, lose your certification or your licenses from the state because of non-compliance, right? And non-compliance basically means hazard to patient or potential safety risk for patients. So we want to stay in compliance every day, not just on survey day, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have heard that, right? Like we shouldn't have to do anything different on survey day. We do it right. We do it compliantly every single day. Yeah. Follow your policy and procedures.
But they invest more money into staffing when they're coming or having our surveys for sure.
Yeah. I mean, hey, like I've run nursing homes, and you know, as much as I say this to you guys, like I've reacted the same way. Like it's like, I mean, I do a lot of mock stuff, so it's pretty much I can like, okay, if state walks in, you know, here's the code, right? And I'm walking through the halls, and as I walk through the halls, I want report, you know, on endorsements on where we're at as far as status of patients, you know, who's in showers, all these sort of things, right? So yeah, you get stepped up, but honestly, like with proper staffing, proper standard operating procedures or policy and procedures, proper training and practice, we shouldn't have to do anything different on a survey day, really.
Yeah.
Dialysis is a lot less stressful than a hospital or a nursing home. I'll tell you that from a survey perspective. Much easier survey.
Wow.
Yeah, nursing home was the worst for me. Like, not just survey, but also like you guys know hospital and nursing home, right? Like they like patient says it's cold and the state's gonna come in. So it's not just survey, it's also every complaint the state comes in, and you got like a mini survey every time they come in. Same thing with the hospital, right?
Yeah.
And then with the hospital, you got more than CMS, more than the state, you got probably JACO too, right?
Yeah. And everyone's in their best behavior when Jacob's coming.
And we miraculously have full staffing when the week of Jacob.
Oh, they announced it now on the in Ohio when I was there for a year. They'll announce it. Okay, you know, Jacob's on their way.
Yeah. Put on your shoes. Wake up.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So again, today was just meant as high level overview. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.
I guess I got to actually, wait, how do I stop it? Stop recording. Okay. So I'll send this over to you guys by this evening. And then just continue. We're just going to stick with module 1 in this high level overview, dig into those stories. I look forward to kind of hearing what you guys find and then your perspectives on it. I was, again, I can't say how thankful I am that you guys, first day I gave you an assignment, you looked it up. Those are the nuggets you guys are going to see, is like when you do the extra work and then have the dialogue, it's going to really season you up and prep you for like good conversation with people, whether it be your interviewers or your patients and their families or your colleagues, like to really sound like you understand this domain, you know?
And you know, I'm sorry that I did the